All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Hunter Hinson. I'm a student at the Oxford Internet Institute, and it's my pleasure to introduce you all to the Oxford Internet Policy and Politics Hybrid Conference. Today's panel will be cybersecurity, looking at some current issues, and we have several presenters from the American Public University System. First, we'll have Dr. Elliot Lin. Secondly, Dr. Harry Cooper, and finally, Dr. Janice Farkas. Two of our presenters today will be joining us remotely. However, Dr. Lin will be joining us here in Oxford today, and I'd like to introduce you all to him first. So let's give a big round of applause for Dr. Lin.
Thank you very much. Started here. All right. So I know there's some folks online. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, first of all. And please, if there's any questions that are burning to get out, feel free to ask them or interrupt as I go. I'm happy to address them and answer them. I'm speaking on biometric technology, post-COVID world. As we know, since COVID-19 has swept all over the world, a lot has changed. New norms are not all that normal anymore. And it continues to evolve. So just a bit of a background for myself. I worked several years biometrics data team on the federal side of things, DOD, CCOM and DOD, which is Department of Defense, I'm sorry, and Logistics Readiness Center as well. So with that, I led a team that came up and worked along with DOJ, DOD, NGIC, CIA, FBI, to come up with a lot of the standards that we use today for our systems to communicate, not only in the United States, but abroad. So I'll be quick, but not too. So just a really brief overview. Biometrics overall, you've seen it a million times. You've seen a million things about it, especially on television shows. It's this magical thing that identifies us, but there really is a lot behind it. It's just really a form of saying, this is who I am this person. You can verify me this way. 9 times out of 10, it's coupled with something else you know, or something else you have. So you're either typing something in, your password or some kind of credential, or it ties into a different device to work along with you for more reliable overall authentication. So the modalities are, they continue to evolve. We all, I think, are familiar with the latent fingerprint facial recognition, really big over the last couple of years. Palm geometry, not necessarily something that you see a great deal, but still a very reliable modality. Handwriting, maybe a bit sketchy, but it's still considered a modality that's fair. Retina, iris, voice is now emerging. If you've been calling or using a mobile device, you may call in and you'll hear something such as, we recognize you from your voice. That's the very early, somewhat sketchy elements of the voice recognition modality. There's still a lot of things to go along with it. Us as human beings have a variety of changes in our voice on any given day. So it's still pretty tough to really nail that one down. Things should just. So this is just a very basic map to give an idea, everywhere that there's a star or something of that sort here is where we utilize facial recognition. Whether it's tied into some kind of law enforcement system, whether it's tied into some kind of surveillance, or in some cases, some stealth action, right? Because some of the bad actors, hopefully just walking on the street, hiding in plain sight. Hoping that we could use these type of things to pinpoint some of these bad actors and sweep them up pretty quickly, without incident, as they feel that they're high. There's a significant investment in several cities, and now you'll find, and even some organizations, especially those that have a large issue with theft, right? So from where I am, on the Target or Walmart, you have to forgive me that I don't know all the big shopping stores here, but just imagine someone that's a known shoplifter, but pretty elusive, can walk into that store and then have a system pick them up as they walk in and identify those points and be able to at least avert or prevent any kind of incident before it happens. So cities with significant investment, environmental technology, New York City, 9/11, billions of dollars, lots of money sunk in to the infrastructure there, especially in some of the high traffic areas, such as Times Square, where the ball drops every year. So far, still without incident. Some of the bridges, tunnels, some of the other areas that that can get a really good capture of someone's points once upon a time. Los Angeles in the streets, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Atlanta. So all of these things, all of this stuff was emerging, all of this money was sunk into all of the infrastructure, all of these wonderful things to keep us safer, make us that much more safe. But then here comes COVID-19. So a lot of things changed with that. And you could say, well, the technology is the technology, just a pandemic, virus, whatever the case. How in the world could that alter all of this money, all of this infrastructure, all of these things? Why in the world would we even want to change it? Suspicious now. Wear a mask, gloves, you can cover almost all of your face. All of the points that capture that signature for your facial recognition systems are useless. So someone says, oh, well, maybe we can capture just some of it and capture, and get this person. But imagine how much it takes to really apprehend someone to feel as a terrorist. Not TV at all, right? So now where you are 95% sure that this is this person, you're down to 30%. Apprehend somebody that's on a walk, maybe lives around the corner. Lawsuits alone would bankrupt any country. So what do? What can you do for someone that is just doing what the new normal was, at least at that time? And it's not like facial recognition didn't have its problems already. It did once upon a time. But as they continue to work through them, they got this thrown in there. And now the mad dash is on is, how do we make this just as reliable? How do we not lose the money that we already sunk into this? How do we retrofit this in a post-COVID-19 world? Difficult. In some cases, it seems like it's almost impossible. All the money that you do with facial recognition. So there's 80 points. There's 80 points that they say in here that if we grab these 80 points, we could almost positively say, you are you. However, you may have heard one or a million times that there's always somebody that looks like someone. But looking like someone isn't enough. There are some unique characteristics that come with these things. So, darker skinned individuals, lighter skin, maybe you're frowning, maybe you're smiling, maybe you cut your eyebrows off. Maybe you give yourself a scar on purpose. Maybe you do some form of mutilation. It's still, in its previous form, was pretty good at capturing those points and saying this person is this person is this person. If you think about, if you have an iPhone or Android or one of those devices that uses facial recognition now, once upon a time, you went to look at it, if you had a mask on, it wouldn't recognize who you were. And then they said, okay, well, we can fix that. They'll say that you can look down and we'll grab enough of this to say that maybe it is you or it is enough you. That's fine as a consumer. But it's not fine enough for law enforcement. It's not enough to convince a judge at 2 o'clock in the morning that you need a warrant because you're 50% sure, or maybe 40% sure. You may have all of these other things that are in place, maybe surveillance, people put feet on the ground, but what about in those cases where you really are not sure? And a missile attack is based on the ability to recognize this person. Facial recognition may be all that you have. Up close and personal is a little easier, you know you got a print. It's after the fact, but you know you got one. Retina scan, person's probably dead. In their eyes, capture that signature, you can confirm that kill. But to do it, to really prevent something now, it's very difficult to do. And while facial recognition is one thing, what about a fingerprint? It's not uncommon for anybody to walk around with, and have gloves on. And even after COVID, as some feel that COVID is gone, it's over, it's declared over, no longer a pandemic, but it's a virus, no 5 days, no 14 days, but 5 days, and in some cases, we'll just wear a mask and you'll be fine. Who's gonna question anybody that's walking around in the summertime with gloves? But who cares if somebody has on gloves and they're just plastic gloves and feel like, oh, they're being safe. Criminals get to do this now in plain sight. So the ability to identify, even after these crimes, have become much more difficult than they've ever been. So it's not saying that the latent or the ability to identify somebody this way has gone away, but it's much more tougher when now it's time to convict somebody based on that print. Or somebody wants to go do something and they have on gloves. There's no questions to it. How do you combat this in a post-COVID world? What are the next modalities to come? It's almost as if COVID has come along and rendered some of the a lot of the technology that we use for biometrics useless, at least in a law enforcement sense. Law enforcement, preventive measures, things of that nature. A lot of people don't really think about the amount of money that was sunk into this before COVID. And there's no real solution in terms of reliability. There's no guesswork in the event that that is your only tool to rely on for a capture or a preventive measure, to be sure. Now you have no prints or anything. DNA, okay, maybe, if you're lucky, but that's not very likely. It's not a, if you will, some of the things that you see on some of the television programs that we're going to bring this person in, they're going to smoke a cigarette, we're going to grab that cigarette, we're going to test it, and off you go. It certainly doesn't work like that. However, it does work from just sloppy, silly things that human beings do. Grab a handrail as you're walking somewhere. You touch this, you touch that, but the boots on the ground or the surveillance that comes along with it, is able to see captions. We know that this is this person, we could scan that latent print just like that, and off they go. So think about the agents, if you will, that are surveilling these people, and they can't even grab a fingerprint. They have no confidence of anything that goes along with all this biometric technology that we've put billions of dollars into. What do you do next? Where's the compromises? But there has to be some, right? There has to be some. So voice is one thing, but again, it's still sketchy. You have a million things that you can do to disguise your voice. And some of them cost as little as $4 or $5. There's apps that you can do it. And if you use those apps at the inception of your, or beginning of your criminal activity, when do they ever really get a voice unless you have someone that's willing to provide that information along? Really, really a tough. Your eyes are your eyes. It's not likely that they're going anywhere, but record scans are super expensive. It's not really a common mode or use of biometric technology. New modalities is going to be tough because it's based on who you are. And then there's rights to privacy, right? So even if there is no consent or some consent to provide some of this, in most cases, a criminal element will know these things and they aren't going to provide it willingly. So what's next? If you think about the things of who you are, what can somebody take and identify you with if you are post-COVID dressed? What evidence are you really going to leave behind? It's what is the new norm to bring law enforcement back to a point that we know that the criminal is the criminal, we capture this particular person without being subjected to thousands of lawsuits to get one criminal because we had so many wrong based on this technology. It's almost like, where do you go next and what do you do? Some are saying that it's a dying technology, if you will. It's slowing down. It will not be anything like it's ever been prior to COVID. Worst case, they're saying the investments that are there are substandard at best. Biometric technology is very, very rarely used as a single form of authentication. It's almost always coupled with something else. For those that use that single form, they're going with the more expensive things. Retina scan is a retina scan. It's not like in the movies where somebody's going to cut your eyes out and then go in there and open this thing. There's a lot that goes into it that, you know, if you take the movie silliness out of it, it's very difficult and very expensive to do. So you'll see things like voice come along. Handwriting, they try to do, but who writes cursive anymore? Kids aren't even taught it. So if you're printing, how much is a handwriting modality of use to any law enforcement? Unless there's somebody, I want to say that's 40 plus, that have written that way, and you have records of people writing that way for some time, it's a useless one. Again, but before we got to that point, billions of dollars sunk into it behind the scenes because we felt like we can catch somebody this way. Handwriting experts, they don't come a dime a dozen. It's super expensive, but they're also a dying breed. When's the last time that somebody was able to really identify somebody based on their signature that didn't want them to? Write with your other hand if you need to. There's certain swipes and things like that they say that they can catch, but maybe 20%, 15% at best. So where do we go from here? What do you have? Biometric technology is still there, but it's more of a consumer-based thing now. as opposed to law enforcement, except for in some of those things that are used in theater and war to identify some of the captures, to keep those prisoners detained, to know, like, you know, now that you've captured this criminal, you can grab all of this information, but it's almost only useful while you have them. It's useless once they're gone, because they're gonna put on gloves, they're gonna put on a mask, and put shades on with that mask and a hat. Now you have a complete ghost. And how do you walk up to anyone and say, take off that hat, or take off that mask? Or even physically touch someone without a horrible lawsuit to come? Will bankrupt local police departments. Federally, it's even more difficult because you have over a 98 or 99% conviction rate. And that's all based on, they know everything of what they know. So now the guesswork begins necessarily. So the reason this is one of the things that I think this is so important, because you don't hear about it enough outside of law enforcement circles. You don't hear the norm changing. You don't hear anyone say you can't wear a mask, and you'll never hear it. You can't tell anyone you can't wear sunglasses, you can't wear plastic gloves, you can't protect yourself against COVID-19 or the fear of. How do you change that? You can't. So this is an open question to everyone. What's next? What are we going to do next? Not only to salvage the money that we put out there, but to make it just as reliable. There are several tools in this biometric toolbox that are useless to us now. AAFIS has a great deal of fingerprints and things to identify criminals and others. But what do you do now? Nobody has to burn their fingertips off or dip their fingers in certain hard material and then go commit a crime. It's difficult. But you don't have to do it now because you have a glove. And no one can't say that you can't do that. You can't wear this glove. Wherever you walked into anywhere and they say, remove your gloves before you come in, the entry required. Or no mask allowed. Your mask has to come off when you come in here. They can ask you to lower it as you go to get on a plane very quickly. These aren't trained professionals there. And if you think about how quickly you lower it and put it back up, it's a matter of seconds. It's not enough time. There isn't any devices that are out there that are able to capture anything that quickly. How do you train professionals now to look for a criminal? I couldn't identify anybody in this room after today, unless you were right back in front of me. And probably it would require you to say, hey, do you remember me? And so imagine the untrained professional that this is just their job. I'm standing as a TSA agent. I'm just a TSA agent. You don't pay me enough to remember everybody that's coming through or to be on the lookout for these 10 people that are coming. How far do you spread the law enforcement now? The boots on the ground are the boots on the ground. You need that much more now because you don't have these tools. So where is the development of it? How can you get something from 90% to 40% that everybody will listen to? What's next? So I've been working along, I'm sorry, you have to forgive me. You have to be mindful of what's secret versus top secret for official use only. So I've been working along with others to identify some of these gaps in this technology and where can we fill it? What can we do next? How can we minimize the risk of a human element or a human resource with the technology? So as you leave here and you listen to some of these other great things that go along with it, be mindful of, does did this person come in with a mask? Did they leave with a mask? Is there something that I can easily grab from this person if I was law enforcement? What did this person do, have, or anything that's different than anybody else? Gestures aren't enough. Frowns aren't enough. Glasses. There really is a significant gap here to fill. The academic community, as well as law enforcement and other scholars and practitioners in the field, really need to come together and work on this to figure this out. We're almost back into the Cold War days, where hand-to-hand combat is common to catch a criminal, as opposed to utilizing the technology. So we have to figure out how to take some of these steps forward, how to at least capitalize on the investment that we have without violating the rights and privacy of individuals to live their everyday lives. I'll open it up for any questions, whether it's here in the room or online. Happy to answer. Only one. How about when everybody makes it just that easy for me? Well, there's a couple of other presentations behind me. My co-director and esteemed colleague, Dr. Harry Cooper, has a fantastic presentation that follows behind here. And if there's no questions, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cooper. Dr. Cooper. Thank you.
All right, let's try that again with me actually unmuted this time. Hello, everybody, and my apologies. I wish I was there with you guys today. I was supposed to be, but I got hit by a stomach bug and lost 10 pounds in the past 4 days. So I'm functional enough to be here with you guys today. So what I'm going to be talking about today is when sock puppeting goes wrong, the rise in catfishing and sextortion, and its effects on society. As soon as my computer decides to play nice, there we go. So, I teach at APUS and other universities, just like Dr. Lin. We are both directors of the Center for Cyber Defense at American Public University System. And I'm primarily a teacher. I tend to focus almost entirely on teaching. I enjoy it. So today we're going to be talking about catfishing, then sock puppeting, extortion and sextortion, and then thoughts and wrap up. Let's talk catfishing first. Catfishing is simply, excuse me, refers to when, sorry, I'm trying to move the video off so in case it's showing on your side. Catfishing refers to when a person takes information, images, typically from other individuals, and uses them to create a new identity for themselves. So, in essence, they're going and, not taking somebody like Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie or somebody like that. They're taking some unknown individual who's just an average everyday Joe, and they're taking on their persona. They use their persona, at least with catfishing, primarily to trick other people into associating with them or doing some type of business or romance or whatever online. Now, catfishing, I really don't like the term catfishing. I really don't like catfishing. I tend to focus almost entirely on sock puppeting. Unfortunately, when I'm talking with students and other people, and I say, do you know what sock puppeting is? I get completely blank stares. And then I have to say, do you know what catfishing is? And everybody goes, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is. So catfishing, when we look at it, we're looking at it from an average person standpoint. Why does the average person do catfishing? One, insecurity. They think that they don't look attractive enough. Um, you know, everybody here has heard, when you show up at a meetup at a bar or something with somebody who you're supposed to meet, you've been chatting with them online for, months, and you show up and they said that they were 35 and 5'10" and 220 pounds, and they're 5'3", 300 pounds and 60 years old. It's them trying to cover for what they think people will not like. Concealing their identity. They might be trolling people, because we know trolling never happens. Or they might be cheating on a partner. Mental illness. Depression and chronic anxiety sufferers can gain confidence in themselves, in their personality, simply by making themselves better than somebody else. Revenge. Everybody's heard about the catfish, where cheerleader's mother got basically catfished a rival of her daughter and got her to kill herself. Experimenting with sexual preferences. It allows them to explore their sexuality as someone else. And finally, to harass their target. Most times, the catfishing comes in play, in play after they've already been blocked once or twice. So they get blocked. Well, they have to create somebody new, so you can't, you don't know who you're blocking. And once they figure that out, they'll just create somebody new, and they just keep creating and creating and creating. Some brief statistics. 20% of men admit to falling for catfish more than 5 times. Not just one time, 5 separate times. 20% of millennials have talked with catfishers. 22% of victims have sent adult photos to their catfisher. 55% of catfishers feel no remorse for their actions. 79% of women who lost money are over the age of 40. And the most susceptible to catfishing, that tends to be the romantics. Some people may not have heard of this individual, Monty Teo. He was a football player at Notre Dame and subsequently in the NFL. And he had been catfished. And here's a quick quote from him. To realize I was a victim of what was apparently someone's sick joke and constant lies was and is painful and humiliating. So it's not just the average everyday Joe. It could be somebody that is famous, within their realm, in this case, football. Oh, sorry. This is UK, American football, not soccer. So, sock puppeting. And I always use this guy on the left-hand side here, the pets.com sock puppet. I love it. I used to have one and I lost him, and I really would love to find one again. And if anybody gets the reference to the line of text underneath the sock puppet, you can live in torture with me as to what that means. So sock puppeting is a more advanced and professional technique. It's been around just as long, and I would actually argue a lot longer than catfishing, but has more distinct features and deeper goals. Catfishes are mainly aimed at intentionally misrepresenting oneself to potential romantic partners, or manipulating, or again, one of the many things that we listed. Sock puppets are false online identities ran by individuals and or organizations for numerous purposes with a focus on deception. I actually actively teach this skill. I've been teaching sock puppeting since 2011, so now going on about 13 years of teaching sock puppeting. I state that catfishing is what you do when you're poking at others on social media with little to no pre-work, whereas sock puppeting is an act that requires a lot of upfront work to build out a realistic identity with true depth and background. So when you're catfishing, people will spend 5 minutes setting it up. They'll go out, get some pictures, come up with a name, create the accounts, do what they need to do. When you're going to make use of a sock puppet and create a sock puppet, you're going through 20, 30, 40 steps before you even get to creating those accounts. What are some examples of sock puppeting? First one is the 2016 presidential election. Russian sock puppets reached as many as 126 million Americans on Facebook, 20 million on Instagram, and they tweeted over 1.4 million times in just 2 months. To give you an example of some of the things that they were doing, first example was a rally, an anti-Trump rally in New York City on November 12th, had been created, distributed, and promoted by a Russian agent who was using a sock puppet, and had been targeted only to a focused group of just 188 individuals. By the time the event date came around, again, there was no event, 33,000 people had expressed interest in attending, and thousands of people actually did attend. So when you look at those numbers and you're like, oh, they just targeted 188 individuals, that's nothing big. You know, it's not like they had any mass effect. Well, they did. They got 33,000 people to express interest and thousands to actually show up. A single post on and they title it this, that's why there's double quotes, a Blacktivists Facebook group created by a Russian agent using a real event with a propaganda twist was able to garner over 300,000 interactions. One post on one page. It's not just the Russians doing it to us here in the US. It is China doing it to their own people in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong pro-democracy protests, Chinese government information operation directed against the pro-democracy protests and protesters, used images and slogans that were close to but not exact to the ones the protesters were using to turn their opinion, or to turn the public opinion against the protesters. In August 2019, Facebook identified just 7 pages with 15,500 followers exhibiting coordinated inauthentic behavior. So those numbers don't seem scary, you know, 7 pages, 15,500 followers, but these were 15,500 followers interacting in a coordinated behavior. Twitter removed 936 sophisticated active accounts spreading active disinformation, as well as 200,000 accounts of lesser sophistication for their involvement. Basically, the 936 were the primary accounts. Those 200,000 were the ones who were basically sitting there and following and things like that, promoting, retweeting. And yes, I'm still using the words Twitter and such because this was pre-X. And to tie along with what Dr. Lim was talking about, we even have sock puppeting with COVID-19 pandemic. Not just the origins of the virus, its spread, its effects, its treatments, the vaccine, you name it, sock puppets were there the entire time. 2020 study estimated that around 50% of all Twitter accounts that had posted about COVID-19 by that point were spreading misleading and even more so blatantly false information, i.e. disinformation. Same study showed that in previous contentious events, such as national elections, the percentage of accounts spreading disinformation was closer to 10 to 20%. So, presidential election in 2020, 10 to 20%. COVID in 2020, over or approximately 50%. Now we're going to kind of talk about the extortion and sextortion. We're going to get into the nitty gritty here, what I really wanted to focus on. And that is sextortion, and I say romance scams that have gone farther. Sextortion is the threatened dissemination of explicit, intimate, or embarrassing images of a sexual nature without consent, usually for the purpose of procuring additional images, sexual acts, money, or something else. So sextortion is going through the roof. December 2021 study found that 3.5% of minors reported being victimized by sextortion, and 11% reported being a victim of image-based sexual abuse. Victims of sextortion reported that at the time of their victimization, they were under the age of 18. Most common consequences of sextortion are depression, anxiety, developmental disruption, attempted suicide, and actual suicide. Whoop, sorry, wrong way. So, who are the most common targets of sextortion? By and far, the biggest number is under 18 children. Over 70% of victims are under the age of 18. This most commonly with boys are between the age of 14 and 17, and most common currently with girls, pretty much anybody above the age of 13. Women can also, like above 18, can also be targets, especially if they are in the 18 to 25 category. LGBT plus, all of them are targeted, with outing being the key threat that is used against them. Men, especially in, again, the 18 to 25 years old range. And one thing to note is neither the nationality or the country of residence have any significant effect or deterrent to the people carrying out the sextortion. And just for those who might enjoy it, down in the bottom right, that picture, everybody has a skeleton in their closet. That's what sextortion is playing the game of. The most common outcomes. There is a set of short-term and long-term. Short-term, immediate distress, includes feelings of self-blame, worry, stress, anxiety. Other short-term reactions, such as suicidal thoughts, anger, and not feeling nervous. Long-term, pattern of enduring anxiety, post-traumatic stress, self-isolation, distrust, OCD-like tendencies, such as constant internet searches of themselves, constantly second-guessing their decisions, long-term self-harm, or suicidal ideations. Briefly want to just cover two cases of sextortion. These are particularly this case, the Jordan DeMay case, was the one that kind of made me do this presentation, because I've been wanting to talk about how suck puppeting is being used more and more by groups and individuals, and we'll go even farther here in a few slides. But in this particular case, Jordan DeMay is from Marquette, Michigan. He was 17 years old, and 3 Nigerian men were pretending to be a female, coerced him into sending a nude photo of himself to them, and then demanded $1,000 from him. Unable to attain the money, he made the unfortunate decision to take his life. After the team had responded by saying that, the men responded with "good and enjoy your miserable life." These 3 men are actually, from everything that you can find online, are actually being extradited to the US to face charges for their roles in his death. That's not something that is very common. Another one, again, outside of the US, this one was Daniel Lintz, 17-year-old from rural Manitoba. In February 2022, he received a message request from an attractive young female on Snapchat. During the conversation, was coerced into sending a nude photo of himself, and within minutes of sending the photo, Daniel was blackmailed, and within 3 hours, he took his own life. This is not a big city issue. This is not a small city issue. This is an everywhere issue. No one has been charged in his death, but just as a simple example, the small town where he and his family lived, that had just over 600 people as its population, within months after his death, 2 other boys were targeted by sextortion. So let's do our thoughts and then wrap up. Sextortion in business. This is Maria Caparas. She's a Philippine individual Philippine-based queen of sextortion, and viewed by many as the creator of today's sextortion scam. She has been arrested multiple times, but never convicted. She employed young men, women, girls, boys, trans women to solicit males into webcam sessions. These sessions were recorded and then used to extort money from the victims. Victims were based all over the world. And when you look at this and you're like, how's this business? Her employees worked roughly 3 days a week. The average daily wages were £5. One employee made more than £1,000 in just a simple 3-day period. This is where we're kind of taking it to the next level, and this is where the scariness comes in. This is an article that's set to be published in the next month or so. It's called "The Cyber Industrialization of Catfishing and Romance Fraud." Authors are Fengzhu Wang and Volkan Topali. They are classifying a new form of fraud business, a new form of fraud and business model called intimacy manipulated fraud industrialization, or IMFI. This moves away from sextortionists being just a single scammer to a team approach. Their tools are not, just random online tools and search engines and things like that. Their tools are enterprise software, CRM software. They have corporate structures. They have customer service processes. They even have, company bonus, employee bonus plans and such. They incentivize their employees by rewarding them for each successful scam. What does this do? This gives the team of scammers the ability to work a victim across multiple days and time periods, allowing for little to no cool-off periods for the victim to be able to call in to question things. Company is able to provide deeper and more detailed dossiers on the victims in real time. Employees in company are able to project a legitimate front for their activities, including following business laws, employment laws, etc. Workers are provided background files on clients, including photos, histories, and other social media intelligence, and present themselves as interested potential romantic or intimate partners. The entire process is mediated via algorithmic processes that monitor the worker's productivity and monetize all interactions between clients and employees. So wrap up in conclusion here, there are no new crimes. There are just newer ways to carry them out. In the 1920s, Albert Fish started kind of catfishing of sorts, in which he had an alter ego that would engage women via mail and such, normal conversation, and go disturbing. The term catfishing itself is believed to be introduced in the documentary film from 2010 called Catfish. These actions that were once perpetuated by single individuals for their own individual reasons have now shifted to an industry focused on carrying out these actions on an industrial scale. So I want to thank everybody for listening to me. I tried to speed up a little bit there to give back some to Dr. Farkas. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can provide you that information or slides, whatever you need. Thank you.
Yeah. Harry? Oh, I think the young lady over there has a question.
Good day, everyone. My name is Janice Farkas. I'm going to be speaking today on a project that I did for my practicum with regard to my doctoral work at American Public University. So I am trying to share my screen. Bear with me.
While she's doing that, did somebody in the room have a question?
Thanks, Dr. Cooper, for earlier. I just had a comment because this thing with sextortion with young male teenagers is, I think, becoming quite a thing now. I was at the Stanford Trust and Safety Research Conference in September last year, and there was a couple of advocacy groups that were doing some research work on this. And what they found was that if you can actually inform parents and students, teenagers, that when these sextortion scams happen, that if you actually ignore them, there's no follow-up. Most of the time when they make these threats, they don't actually come through. They don't actually continue to disseminate the photos. And then the other thing is, if you do then send the money, what they found was that these scammers would then demand more money. So I think there's two pieces of evidence, from the cases that they've studied, which is I think 11 cases, 2 of which resulted in suicides, completed suicides. I think that kind of information could be spread more widely so that parents and teenagers know what to do. Yeah, but thank you very much for that, because I think in the last couple of years, this is becoming a thing. I actually work on online child safety. I was at the Twitter Trust and Safety Council. My name is Eliane at Harvard. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that I have about 10 or 12 minutes to get through this. So I appreciate my colleagues' presentations, really wonderful to follow them because I think they're talking about areas in which policy really needs to be looked at for prevention and prosecution of these types of behaviors that are occurring on the internet and are otherwise going unchecked, obviously. My presentation focuses more on policies that have been enacted that have affected cyber security and critical infrastructure specifically. I am a doctoral student at American Public University, so not a doctor yet, but I thank you all for recognizing the work that I've done so far. It's okay, Dr. Cooper, thank you. And so through my research and my work, I do work for the rail industry in New Jersey as the director of intelligence. And so my background really is in strategic intelligence, not cybersecurity. But the research that I've been doing and the work that I did with regard to my practicum for American Public University focused on both. So in October of 2022, the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, handed down some new policies and directives on the railroad industry, basically encouraging enhanced cybersecurity protections for the industry. And so those directives required all rail industries to implement new protective measures for the safety and security of the cyber infrastructure that runs basically everything to do with the business, whether it's the operational technology or our human resources information, the sales of tickets, all of these types of systems that underlie the rail network for the New Jersey rail system, and all of the rail systems throughout the country needed to follow these new directives. And so critical infrastructure and key resource agencies really were left with these set of policies and told basically implement them. One of them specifically had to do with predictive analysis and being able to identify threats to the cybersecurity infrastructure and act on them. But cybersecurity professionals, from what I have seen, really do not understand or didn't have the tools to develop intelligence. And so from my perspective in my work and experience in developing strategic intelligence, I saw the need within my own organization and other transportation organizations around the country to help them understand what that meant for them to be in compliance with these policies. And so through that, we looked to develop a cyber intelligence collection plan. And so in speaking with the cyber professionals within my organization, we decided to look at how to develop intelligence requirements. And so as you want to develop strategic intelligence so that you're not thrown into a world of, what are we looking at? Because there's so much information with cybersecurity, and there are so many threats from cyber criminals, nation state actors, and hackers, and so many different other types of threats. How are we going to classify these and process the information that's coming in so that it's prioritized? So we looked at specifically developing intelligence requirements based on cyber and criminal indicators, receipt of informational warnings from either paid services that we employed or other critical infrastructure partners, governmental agencies, and basically, TSA, DHS, other types of intelligence agencies who have now really gotten in front of the cybersecurity threat, especially for critical infrastructure partners within the United States. We taking all of that information and trying to prioritize it into a manageable plan so that that strategic intelligence could be formed and used appropriately to satisfy the policies and directives. So my project continued with the development of an actual collection plan. And if any of you are in the intelligence community or have had any experience with the military or anything like that, you may have touched on intelligence collection plans. Basically, within that, you develop a set of critical and specific information requirements, as well as essential elements of information. And so we looked at certain questions such as what types of nation state threat actors are looking to use transportation or critical infrastructure as a target. What types of tactics are they using? What vulnerabilities are being exploited? And what capabilities were being developed by different groups, whether it was a hacker, a nation state actor, a cyber criminal, or any sort of actor that we should be concerned about. What types of systems were they looking to attack, and other types of pre-attack indicators that we might be concerned about. And so we started to look at those questions and try to develop which ones are a priority for us, which didn't we have a lot of information on, and which did we actually know some information on that we may not have to collect on as accurately and as actively as possible. And so the first step was to develop this plan and prioritize it. Secondly, we created a collection plan reporting system so that when we did come in contact with information, we could fill out these documents. It was just a PDF form that the cybersecurity staff could complete that would prioritize the information, narrow it down to what may be relevant to those priorities that we spoke about, and just really accurately and easily record the information so that when we needed to refer back to it, doing the analysis part of the strategic intelligence development, these documents were already in place. We developed a tracking tool based on the collection plan, and that document would highlight how many reports were used, how many pieces of information might be collected, and then be able to monitor how actively we are collecting on certain pieces of information versus those priorities that we established. And so this gave us an idea of how much information we needed to collect on certain things. If it was a higher priority, but we had no reporting, that meant we needed to really pursue that information through other means, whether it be reaching out to our partners or maybe some of the intelligence agencies within the United States, or even other countries where there might be actors from outside, since the cyber network is global and we're getting attacked from basically everywhere in the world at this point. Attacks can come from anywhere. So making sure we have those partners in place so that we can gather that information and actively pursue it to satisfy the priorities and the TSA directive. And finally, the last piece of the project included a cyber intelligence collection plan training. Again, cybersecurity professionals really did not have the skills to understand how to develop that strategic intelligence, because they're used to just looking at information and establishing those networks and hardening those targets within the cyber community. Intelligence development really wasn't something that they knew of. So we developed a collection plan training platform so that they could understand the process of collecting the intelligence and then go into those developed reports and do an analysis and really develop that strategic predictive and intelligence to satisfy those directives. So again, my name is Janice Farkas. I'm a doctoral student at APUS. This is my information. As I mentioned, I'm a strategic intelligence student and professional, more so than the cybersecurity, but I'm happy to take any questions on the project and the directives. And I think I brought us right to the end of the time, so I'll turn it back over to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. I believe we have 1 minute for a question if anyone has one. That's all right. If not, we can wrap up. All right. Thank you, everyone. That's the end of today's session. And thank you to all of the speakers for attending. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.